The HRDC is a multi-tiered and multi-stakeholder advisory body established in March 2010 to advise our Deputy President on the need for implementation of the Human Resource Development Strategy and related policies, such as the coordination, development and nurturing of all efforts which can be utilized to stimulate a culture of learning and training for all South African individuals and groups by empowering and providing them with fundamental skills for the various job sectors.
Old school training wearing you down? Want to turn those eager frowns upside down? Look no further! The Lesson Desk Hercules device transforms your training room into a digital, interactive training arena. Out with the old and in with the new. Fun, interactive digital training. Assess the training and receive instant results at the click of a button. What are you waiting for? Step into the Lesson Desk arena.
Are you a current or aspiring director? Are you in the public sector and need to understand more about the Public Finance Management Act or Municipal Finance Management Act? Do you know your legislative compliance requirements? Do you want to craft perfectly written minutes? Mashobane Advisory Services, via its training company, Mashobane Training and Mentorship Academy, offers training in the areas of director induction, minute taking, governance, risk management, compliance, data protection and privacy over and above the Protection of Personal Information Act, as well as diversity and transformation. The training is provided by experts in the field and takes a practical approach which adds value to the participants. Contact us for tailor-made training services.
The HRDC is a multi-tiered and multi-stakeholder advisory body established in March 2010 to advise our Deputy President on the need for implementation of the Human Resource Development Strategy and related policies, such as the coordination, development and nurturing of all efforts which can be utilized to stimulate a culture of learning and training for all South African individuals and groups by empowering and providing them with fundamental skills for the various job sectors.
Old school training wearing you down? Want to turn those eager frowns upside down? Look no further! The Lesson Desk Hercules device transforms your training room into a digital, interactive training arena. Out with the old and in with the new. Fun, interactive digital training. Assess the training and receive instant results at the click of a button. What are you waiting for? Step into the Lesson Desk arena.
Are you a current or aspiring director? Are you in the public sector and need to understand more about the Public Finance Management Act or Municipal Finance Management Act? Do you know your legislative compliance requirements? Do you want to craft perfectly written minutes? Mashobane Advisory Services, via its training company, Mashobane Training and Mentorship Academy, offers training in the areas of director induction, minute taking, governance, risk management, compliance, data protection and privacy over and above the Protection of Personal Information Act, as well as diversity and transformation. The training is provided by experts in the field and takes a practical approach which adds value to the participants. Contact us for tailor-made training services.
The HRDC is a multi-tiered and multi-stakeholder advisory body established in March 2010 to advise our Deputy President on the need for implementation of the Human Resource Development Strategy and related policies, such as the coordination, development and nurturing of all efforts which can be utilized to stimulate a culture of learning and training for all South African individuals and groups by empowering and providing them with fundamental skills for the various job sectors.
Old school training wearing you down? Want to turn those eager frowns upside down? Look no further. The Lesson Desk Hercules device transforms your training room into a digital, interactive training arena. Out with the old and in with the new. Fun, interactive digital training. Assess the training and receive instant results at the click of a button. What are you waiting for? Step into the Lesson Desk arena.
Are you a current or aspiring director?
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. That was the panel discussion on infrastructure delivery, restoring the skills pipeline in partnership with the Human Resource Development Council. I'd like to extend much gratitude to Mrs. Brenda Ntombela, who was the head of secretariat at the HRDC, and also to our panelists. Thank you very much for taking the time to truly inform us around the skills pipeline that is needed in infrastructure delivery. Would like to also extend our sincere apologies for the technical glitches and the background that you've been hearing, which I believe was interrupting some of the presentations. Please do be patient with us. As you do know, the virtual aspects of the summit do have their challenges here and there, but we truly apologize for that. And we are noting your comments on our YouTube channel as we are live on YouTube. Also, please don't forget to hashtag Skills Summit 2021 and note that the HRDC does have an exhibition, our virtual exhibition. So please do visit some of the stands, check them out, and you're more than welcome to drop your comments and your questions at the relevant exhibitor. We will engage on the following panel right after this. Thank you.
Hi everyone, this is a quick tutorial on how to become a member of the ASDSA. On our website, click the Join tab. Then scroll down, you'll see that we have an individual membership as well as a corporate discount. For a corporate discount to apply, it has to be a minimum of 2 members for the corporate rates to apply. Click the registration form. Once on the registration form, you'll fill in all the details. You'll submit a copy of your ID or passport. You'll select your membership type, which is individual member or the corporate discount. Read the code of conduct and submit. Once the clients receive your membership registration, they will send you an invoice. Once the invoice is paid and the amount is reflected in the ASDSA bank account, you will receive your membership certificate.
The community enterprise exhibition. Key question, why did we engage with the community? We always focus on the youth, we always focus on our students. But where do our students come from? They come from the community. And how can we grow communities where students see role models experiencing entrepreneurship? That led to our discussion in 2018 to say we need to look at combining community entrepreneurs. So today we are standing at an awesome event. An event filled with vibrancy, filled with opportunity, connecting SMMEs with awesome opportunity. And I need to reiterate this, that this is the first year we're doing it. It's a pioneering year for us, and our aspiration is to do this on an annual basis.
My name is Sipho Setu Stefani from Khayelitsha Travel and Tours. We are based in Khayelitsha, a tour company based in Khayelitsha, operating since 2013, so close to 7 years now. We offer township tours, customized tour packages, flights, accommodation, and transfers. Also, in partnership with MSC Cruises, we also offer cruise experiences and car rental in partnership with Bitfist, yes. CFERI, an initiative, a brilliant initiative for all entrepreneurs who want to grow their business, who want to sustain their business most importantly, and who want to learn new lessons or change their negative aspects about their business.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are at the 14th Leadership Skills Development Summit. Please don't forget to hashtag Skills Summit 2021. We look forward to reading your comments. I've noted that some have asked, how do we apply for construction learnerships? How do we, exercise, certain steps to look into the virtual exhibition, and how do we connect with the panelists? Definitely our team has got you covered. So all of that will be updated. Without wasting any further time, I did promise you that this is going to be quite an interesting day where we grow and we learn. The next panel discussion is about skills development for sustainable manufacturing. And we know manufacturing is truly cross-cutting against different industries and value chains. And we have really, really great panelists who are doing amazing things. And I look forward to hearing how they can help us or advise us as to developing skills in the manufacturing sector. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mr. Raymond Patel, who is the CEO of Turapa. We also have Mr. Arafat Choseri, who's a business development expert, not only in manufacturing, but in the automobile, IT, and so forth. He is based and tuning in with us from India. We have Mrs. Nokwesi Tsapela, who is the founder and CEO of World of Radiance, and she has incredible or impeccable background in developing entrepreneurs, also knowledge of the supply chain and so forth. So we look forward to hearing more about that. We also have Mr. Horst Waynard, who is the head of didactic Festo Southern and Eastern Africa. I wish to welcome everyone who is here. I think I'm sure I've covered all of you, yes. So welcome to all of you. I think let us start with Mr. Raymond Patel, the CEO of Turapa. Please introduce yourself, and then from there we'll have Arafat, we'll have Mrs. Tsapela, and then we'll have Horst. Over to you, Mr. Patel.
Hi, good morning, and thank you, Devang, for the warm welcome this morning. Let me introduce myself.
Okay, Mr. Patel, I think you're on mute.
Oh, am I on mute?
Please check your mic.
No. No, I'm not on mute.
Okay, you're not on mute. Okay, can you just pause for me? Let me just check if we can hear you. Let me check if the studio can hear you. I'll just receive confirmation in a second. Whilst we wait for you, Mr. Patel, let me ask, oh, you're fine. Okay, good. Mr. Patel, I think everybody can hear you. Please go
Hi.
ahead.
Good morning. I tour myself to be a skills revolutionary, and we live in a revolutionary age, which is the fourth industrial revolution. And living in this kind of age, revolutionaries, there's only one word for them. It's either you adapt or you know what happens if you don't adapt, you die. So looking at the fourth industrial revolution, looking at how manufacturing is going to change and how it's transformed, that's what I believe that my work will work into. Where do I come from? I've been a CEO of CETA for a number of years and the chemical CETA before that. So I've worked in the sector for a number of years. Thank you. That's about it. Ms. Mashekhu, can you hear me?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Patel. Let us allow Mr. Arafat, over to you.
Yeah, hi, hello, everyone. Good morning, and here, good evening in India. Myself, Arafat Cholesheri. I am a business coach and a life coach and emotional intelligence trainer, a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt certified professional. And right now, I help business people for their business growth and to implement the best business process. I was working abroad. I was working in Qatar and I was working in Oman with totally different industries. I have been to manufacturing, I have been to IT, FMCG, automobile, and right now I am a full-time business coach, helping especially the small-scale industries people, mainly on the business process and the business growth. That's about me. And here today we'll be discussing about the skill set for the mainly sustainability of the manufacturing area. So I will share my experience from my work experience and my coaching experience, whatever I have with me. Let's do it. Let's talk it. Let's discuss. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you very much, Arafat. And of course, we know that India is taking over the pharmaceutical industry and even the clothing industry with manufacturing. So there's a lot of capabilities there. So we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. Can we have Mrs. Tsapela, founder and CEO of World of Radiance?
Good morning. My name is Nokwezi. I am the founder and the CEO of World of Radiance, which is a lifestyle and fashion services industry. So we are within this creative industry and have been playing within it since 2019. Before that, I worked within the corporate world, primarily in the banking sector, but I focus on entrepreneurial development. I've always had a heart for development, even in my studies in undergrad, but also in pursuing my career, it has always had an element of social impact. And so too within World of Radiance, our approach is collaboration for community development and for creating opportunities for growth. And so I'm particularly interested in hearing the panelists today, because there is a very real need for development within manufacturing for the betterment of our economies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nokwezi. We appreciate your inputs. And can we allow Mr. Horst to engage us?
Greetings, dear Tawang and audience and panelists. Thank you. That's a great lineup we have here. And it points to the multifaceted side of manufacturing, of running an economy, of running a business. So I represent Festo, which is the multinational, one of the leaders in industrial automation. Wherever you have a factory, you have Festo. Anything that opens, shuts, closes, moves, whether it's a car factory or a Coca-Cola factory, there is Festo in it somewhere. And my part of the business is the didactic side. It's the educational side of Festo, which takes the kinds of machines, as you see behind me in my background, and puts those into educational use, puts them into universities and TVET colleges to close that skills gap. Raymond, you spoke of the revolution. Here we are, we're speaking to each other across the world. The fourth industrial revolution is well upon us. And how do we close the ever widening skills gap, the gap between industry and education? That is where employability lies, and that's where productivity lies. So I look forward to discussing that with the rest of the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Horst. I think that is a question on its own, which I definitely will pose to you. So as we go to Raymond, and then I'll go to Arafat, because I heard that you do need to leave earlier. Raymond, how can we develop the manufacturing sector based on the considerations of the fourth industrial revolution?
I think it's about legislation, firstly. We've got to create a conducive platform in this country where we allow people to start participating in the economy. And here, when I say people, I'm beginning to speak about small business development, allow them to start moving and creating jobs within communities. And by doing so, you bring in big business to work with them. But mostly, if you go to Japan, it's a good example I like using. When you go to Toyota uses cooperatives that assembles their vehicles in Japan. We tend to see cooperatives as a social handout. We've got to start developing cooperatives into big business, into business that begins to transform our economy. So if you're asking me, how do we get our manufacturing right? We've got to start, firstly, bringing in what I simply call a proudly South African development product. India, and I guess our next speaker would say, Arafat would probably tell you that, India has gone and started looking at made in India, and that made their manufacturing greater. We've got to stop importing. Our imports are too great. Sorry, Horst. We've got to start manufacturing locally so that we create jobs in this country. And that's how we start getting our manufacturing right. But how do we do that? We have to start looking at what's happening globally. We have to start looking at how manufacturing is changing, how smart manufacturing techniques are getting into the business, how we're beginning to look at intelligent manufacturing systems, advanced robotics, controllers, sensors, machine learning, and bringing this into accessible training environment. We cannot sit with an outdated training environment. And my 35 years of my lifetime, I wrote a PhD in education. I can tell you that the one problem we have in this country is that we academicize. We don't practice enough. The fourth industrial revolution has disrupted manufacturing. Skills development within the manufacturing sector presents us with an advantage to start producing higher quality products and, for that matter, higher quality workers. The development of a skills for sustainable manufacturing is important, that we ensure transition and make sure that we have that competitiveness in us, and to transform our economy into a competitive economy. But what bothers us there is our supply and demand. We are supplying, and I heard Minister this morning, I was sitting the whole morning, I've been with you, Tabang. Oh, wow. I want to thank Deputy Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology for once again emphasizing the whole aspect of funding that's made available from the CETAs. He also goes and speaks of the centers of excellence. My previous employer, the MERCETA, who's funding that particular project. The mixed sector, the agricultural sector, it speaks of funding from CETAs for various other skills development. Lastly, he speaks of funding from the NSF to develop 4,000 artisans. Now, I'm happy to hear businesses embracing this, but what concerns me on the other hand, are we embracing it because there is funding, or are we embracing it to build a competitive economy, a manufacturing economy? I'll pause at that stage.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Patel. That was truly interrogating. I think it's helping us then, emerge. More questions are emerging from that. My head is already spinning because you're mentioning critical issues. Let's go to Mr. Arafat. Just on that basis, I really would like to know, how did India do it, and how is India doing it? Because there's quite a contradiction in India in terms of the economy. On the one aspect, you have extreme issues of poverty, and then on the one aspect, manufacturing capabilities that are contributing widely to the economy. So my question to you is, what manufacturing practices must be applied to ensure competitiveness? Maybe you can tell us the business model that India is currently applying.
Yeah, great. Thanks for your question, Taba. Especially, I'm very happy to take India as a special example. Okay, so in India, I will tell you from my experience, from the Made in India concept. Okay, the people, as Mr. Patel said, everything should go locally, because during this pandemic world, instead of going totally globally, all came into locally, because the manufacturing, that the requirements are from the inside itself. If in India we have our own requirements, and from my experience, if you take into the consideration the example of Qatar, the country Qatar, they were totally blocked from all the neighboring countries, from all the goods movement. But later they became totally independent, not at all depending on any other countries, by raising themselves, all the goods, manufacturing units, everything. Similarly, in India also, everything is being done locally. In India, the manufacturing units situations, the culture, it's totally favorable by the government. We are getting subsidies, we are getting loans, we are getting all kind of support. The manufacturing units get the first priority. If I am applying for any kind of business, the priority goes for the manufacturing unit. Okay, and the second one, how they work. Because in my area, there are many communities with different manufacturing unit.
Right.
Right. For example, we have some women community. It's called Kudumba Shri, mainly family kind of women going into some manufacturing food items and other small items. Okay, so later it gets developed and the quality of the products are very high, and later it gets the exporting opportunities. And similarly, the Made in India concept has reached India. You all know India is a huge country. Okay, so the research totally says that by 2025, India will be the best option as an alternative for other sources. Maybe an alternative for China, maybe an alternative for some other countries. Okay, because in this pandemic world, each of us, each of the countries, when taking into consideration each of the countries, we are looking for alternatives. Relying on just one country or just one supplier, it won't work again. So we have to work to be the alternate source for all other countries and other manufacturing units. That's how it works. And it's all about the support from the government. It's all about the finding, analysis, about the requirements in the future. Okay, nothing works. The tradition never works. We have to think out of the box and find the value of the future, and which all products and which all things are gonna do better in the future. And we should be adaptable and more flexible in the manufacturing process too. And more, we need, as our panelist host said, that we should go more into artificial intelligence and automation stuffs. And we, the Indian, especially in the small scale industries, we are trying to be more adapted to the automation concept. So that will be more helpful in the near future. So by 2025, India will be the best alternative source of for any manufacturing industries in any countries.
Wow.
So that's all from me.
Okay. Thank you, Arafat. Those are critical inputs there, especially on the issue of, government intervention alongside the private sector and adaptability. Kwezi, maybe you can come in here, particularly, using the backdrop of what our first two speakers said. What skills do SMMEs need, particularly in the sector? Because we know that with manufacturing, there are multiple value chains, from input, transition, and output. But what do you think they need to make sure that they grow, to make sure that they maximize opportunities, but most importantly, to make sure that they are included in the mainstream economy? Because Patel mentioned quite a critical, example of saying, we do have South African products, but they are not placed in the mainstream economy. So yeah, what skills do we need, and how can we make sure that SMMEs are incorporated into the mainstream?
So the discussion on skills, I believe, needs to start at a much earlier age.
Absolutely.
The idea of getting into manufacturing needs to be embedded in young people during their schooling years, so that by the time they get to making selections of their careers, whether it is to go into business or to opt for, corporate kind of identity, the idea of manufacturing needs to be so central to our thinking, because it is at this point, as Mr. Patel quite rightly says, where we speak about and create opportunities for localization. Localization then means that we go quite vertical in our accessing of whatever kind, whether it is within the creative space or developing creative thinking, or whether it is, making sure that we are we keep pace with what is happening in the globe. Because much as we are keen and are indeed, invested in localization, it needs to be localization that has global relevance. And so there is a need for a diversity of skills, in the sense that when one is even thinking about what one will pursue, whether you go into business, you're in your 30s, or you are considering business as a very viable career option in your early teenage years, this is seen and is stewarded in terms of developing your skills to be able to participate in that economy. So much as we do speak of the professional skills or the specific skills within manufacturing, whether one is talking about within my industry, the fashion and the creative space. I mean, in our country, for example, the creative industry is almost an afterthought, and it is not even in our fundamental education system. And so whether we're talking about that or even looking at critical thinking to be able to develop skills that are responsive to the requirements locally and globally. So much as we must think about local thinking and bringing local solutions, we also need to be relevant on the global scale, but also on the African continent. There's ample opportunities for us to come up with solutions that are responsive to the African economy. So there is a diversity that is required. I mean, technical skills requirements, yes. IT, absolutely necessary for us to be able to adopt and adapt to the Industrial Revolution. When you think about our South African context, then you think about some of the remoteness of our young people, or even people in business. Then you begin to imagine the exclusivity of such opportunities at this point, yet it ought not to be. It ought not to be a discovery, much later when one is exposed, when one is in their 20s, but this needs to be really stewarded from an early age. So for the Industrial Revolution, absolutely we need to have technical development. We do need a marrying of the creativity within our space. And of course, we do need the sciences. So there's a diversity that is required. But there are also skills that come with being, thinking creatively, that come with managing finances, all of which, should be part of our growth opportunities and managing your businesses, all of these business skills that then enable people to be able to have productive plants, whether it is small family-run plants, as Arthur makes mention of, which is similar to our approach now, or whether one intends to grow and become a huge conglomerate, but it still starts with a refinement of that attention to the detail of developing skills for manufacturing.
Sure. Thank you very much for that contribution. And I think maybe, Horst, this would be a perfect time for you to come in. Okwezi mentioned the importance of diversifying the skill set. Earlier, you mentioned the gap between skills and education. How do we bridge that particular gap, in your opinion?
Well, it's a gap that we see across the whole of Africa, not just in South Africa. And make no mistake, also in Germany. The willingness of young people to enter technical jobs is not as high as entering commercial jobs. And everyone wants to go to university. So university is the ultimate rather than into the technical colleges. So we have a very inverse pyramid in South Africa, where we have a couple of million students at university, but only a couple of 100,000 students at our technical colleges. So therein lies the first problem. The second trick is that our STEM subjects, our science, technology, engineering, maths, at secondary school, even at primary school, isn't developed enough to be able to give the pipeline into our technical colleges and into manufacturing. So let's build it early. Let's get our science and maths pass rates higher, and let's get the quantity higher by inculcating the need for maths and science. What have we got in South Africa? Only 6-7% of our matriculants actually write maths and science. Out of that need to come all of our engineers, all of our accountants, all of our doctors. So let's start early and get STEM going, and then let's drive technical education. Let's drive the attractiveness of technical education.
Edutainment, as they would call it.
Edutainment, certainly. Let's take an example, World Skills International. World Skills is the Olympics of skills. And I see you, Raymond, smiling there. Masita was driving that so hard, and I'd love Masita for that. We were in a couple of World Skills competitions together. And to see the change in a country, when a country actually presents a World Skills competition, or has its team starting to win World Skills competitions, bringing home the gold medals for being the top artisan, the top welder, the top bricklayer, the top aircraft maintenance technician, even the best cook, the best baker. And then to watch a country start coming alive and seeing young children going, wow, that's incredible. Is that what a technical career really looks like? I want to do that. And there's numerous case studies where a country that's presented World Skills, the enrollment at universities dropped and the enrollment at the technical colleges quadrupled. And that is how you build an economy. Then you have the skills to be able to drive the kind of factories that you see behind me. Then the fourth industrial revolution starts becoming reality, and you can play with it. You start to close those skills gaps because your curricula are being influenced by industry. Industry says, this is what we need. These are the machines we're running. I need the people to be able to run these machines. And that's how we get localization going. And that's how we get made in India, made in South Africa, going by being able to have the right skills in the right places. Because we have this weird dichotomy where we have huge unemployment, and Arafat, you mentioned it as well in India. Huge unemployment, but at the same time, huge opportunity for small businesses, big businesses to work together to drive manufacturing. And unfortunately, we're going the wrong way around. In South Africa, we have an exodus of skills. A lot of our skills are going to India because you're getting it right, and we're not getting it that right. So to be able to bring that together and have the right skills that industry need, to have all the curricula that our universities are running, that our technical colleges are running, driven by industry demand. Small case in point, mechatronics. So mechatronics is the combination of mechanical and electronic and information technologies. It's at the heart of the fourth industrial revolution. It's been running in Germany for the last 30 years, but South Africa doesn't yet have a trade test in mechatronics set up. A lot of talk, no action. So there's a quick win: run well skills and get a mechatronic trade test.
Sure. Thank you for that. Raymond, maybe you can come in here. I mean, Mr. Horst spoke about how can we get it right? Perhaps you can answer that question, because we're very adamant about developing local capacity. So how do you think, Mr. Patel, we can get it right? How can we, because I mean, we can't avoid the fact that we have Chinese taking over. There's a scramble for Africa in the world. But how can we, as Africans, get this localization aspect right? And then I'll come to you, Arafat, so that you can be excused in case you have a meeting. Mr. Patel, over to you.
Once again, imperialism only happens in an economy if the economy does not have the relevant people.
Sure.
So, I want to take off where Chris Campbell left. Chris Campbell mentioned something that really caught my ear earlier. And he spoke about lecturing recruitment, and he spoke about the Meister artisan, the German model, which also proudly advocates there, where they bring in industry experts to train the new recruiters. Now, that's one of the models we've got to consider. It's what I chair a college for my own sins of the past. I'm now very involved in Tibet college development. And what worries me when I look at the lecturer development at colleges, we take students who've just graduated and we employ them as lecturers without having industry experience. Now, how do we begin to get this right? Skills development should be about the development of a person into a profession. Professionalization requires that those who design the programs should take into cognizance that these people are going to be lifelong learners. So I'm touching on curriculum, I'm touching on people development. Lifelong learners or lifelong learning is not the norm right now, but it should become the norm in our skills development. It shouldn't be the exception. If teaching practices do not make these changes, we are bound, and I believe that skills development will no longer be viable. We have to start looking very, very closely at fostering curiosity rather than success. And you might criticize me for my statement here. What do we do? And I come from the CETA world. I've worked there for 17 years. And I can tell you, the one thing we get right is we push numbers. Right. So we graduate quite a number of people. But our whole education system is geared at breaking down the inborn curiosity. From primary school, I think one of the panelists spoke about that, right up to graduating as a professional. What we bring in is we want students, we don't want learners. Now, there's a big difference between students and learners. Learners are lifelong learners. you continue learning, and we have to foster lifelong learning into our curriculum, into our system, so that we continue with the curiosity. Instead of wanting to regurgitate information, we need to get the mindset where we start becoming inquisitive and start becoming innovative in our inquisition. That's the one thing I would look at. Secondly, I would look at the skill system where we stop killing that curiosity, but we provide lifelong support, an ecosystem that provides lifelong support to learners who graduate from our universities, who go to HOS, to learners who graduate from our TVET system or from our CETAs. We do not have a lifelong, ongoing ecosystem where we track, trace, and ensure that we skill, we upskill, and we reskill. That's something we have to do after graduation and making sure that we make that. Thirdly, we have to commit to change. And here I speak to business. Business cannot sit back and say, the system is not giving us what we want. Start getting involved, participate in the system, play a meaningful role in transformation within the CETA system and within the TVET system. Adopt a college, work together with the CETA, make sure that the CETAs and the system that provides skills, the universities, the research units, that we start working with them to ensure that a curriculum is not only focused on teaching and learning, but rather in serving the greater community and the economy for that matter. Now, we've got to implement shifts when we do this. I spoke about fostering curiosity and encourage learning. We have to do that. Secondly, we have to look at teaching our students to inquisitive intelligence. Thirdly, we have to stimulate horizontal learning. Fourthly, we have to look at schools that we do stop looking at curriculum as recipes, but looking at a classroom that begins to drive the inquisition and innovation that would stimulate manufacturing. And finally, once we get the curiosity, the reward of curiosity right, we have to make sure that we get an economy that supports that curiosity and innovation into manufacturing.
Thank you so much, Mr. Patel. Sure, that I'm so dizzy because I'm like, yo, that's important. Expand on that, But time will never ever be enough. So we'll go to Arafat, and then we'll go to you, Nokweze, and Horst, and then we'll just close with our remarks. So Arafat, maybe as a business coach, and of course with your background, concomitant to the question that I asked Nokweze, what are the business practices that have been successful according to you, or what are the business practices that SMMEs can apply to ensure success in the manufacturing sector?
In the manufacturing sector, mainly if we are considering the small scale industries, okay, the main thing we need to have is a standard operating procedures, the SOPs. Normally, what a new entrepreneurs while starting in manufacturing unit, what happens is they know how to do it, but the process they just lack in the process. Okay, but if the process is okay, if the standard operating procedures are there, and even if the trainings and certifications and each level 1, level 2, level 3 training process is there as an SOP, a standard operating procedure, it will be more easy for them to adapt to that procedures and be flexible and be more able to learn and do more for their growth.
Sure.
The main point is the standard operating procedures. Don't miss out that, because it's the process. If the process is not there, even though they are okay for the first few years, they will go down if some pandemic comes. Okay, even there should be some plan B and plan C too, because in the current scenario, this standard operating procedures will help them to be more flexible in that scenarios. That means they will be more flexible.
Sure.
The business process is the most important thing while moving forward. And the next thing is the flexibility. Maybe in the product line, maybe in the business process, maybe in the updations regarding the automations, maybe in the upskilling process for the employees, maybe updating the workforce.
Sure.
Anything it may be. Main thing is the business process.
Yeah.
Which should be updated.
That's very important that you mentioned there, Arafat, because we see a lot of companies, the likes of Kodak in South Africa, which does the photography and so forth. I mean, they had an employee capacity of about 98,000, and they ran at a loss. So what you're saying is we need to focus on the quality of skills that we get in building the manufacturing sector or in building our businesses than quantity. And I think that's a very important aspect that we often miss in our business processes or in updating our workforce. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Nokwezi, just over to you there. Mr. Hort really spoke about something very important that, we have somewhat 100,000 students enrolling at TVET colleges or technology institutions versus universities. How do you think we can use creativity to entice young people or entice people towards enrolling in your TVET colleges, the more technological institutions, or institutions that don't seem fashionable, excuse the pun, at all? How do you think we can, or what creative initiatives can we apply to ensure that, we get more young people or get more people streamlined into your TVET colleges and so forth?
So, firstly, I think we need an enabling policy environment within our education system and all spheres of it. So the different areas, whether it is higher institutions or even secondary and primary institutions, we need to start the conversation early. And that enabling environment, particularly the policy, it has to be policy driven. And then we need an education that addresses the different dynamics of society. We know within the African context that education is deemed important. It is deemed, as we often quote even our leaders who speak about education being the key out of poverty. And indeed it is so. However, we now need a mind shift in the sense that it is a different kind of education that is required. And whereas it was seen as something to aspire to go to university. I mean, if I could have a do-over, I would definitely make different decisions had I been better exposed. But the linear transgression is that we have to go through high school to university and then find a job. And yet there are so many other opportunities within so many different sectors. You can be an excellent bricklayer that one day grows to a huge construction establishment. And so instead of looking down upon any of more technical or any of the more applied kind of work that is done within the creative space, it is actually to celebrate it. Even when you call people, at some point I used to work within the citizenship space in the corporate environment and worked with a lot of schools. And now with hindsight, I can see where we invited only bankers and doctors, etc. We could have invited people that are in manufacturing to open up this world. I think it is an opening up of the world to make sure that we understand the different opportunities. And the different opportunities at play can be within the purely creative, where one is talking about fine arts. But even within that fine arts space, there is opportunity for refinement and process improvement, as Arafat put it. However, then there are technical skills that enable our young people to build machines and equipment that are responsive to the very real challenges on the ground. payment pebbles, for example, that are responsive and, will open up a world of influence and inclusivity within, people who were previously marginalized.
Sure.
Technical and an applied technical solution. And so it is not just studying IT for its own sake, but it is studying it with a view to being responsive to the social challenges. And that, I think, is when manufacturing will begin to resonate with our young people. It will begin to resonate even with the people that they are accountable to, because even their parents will begin, who oftentimes have to pay for that education, will begin to understand that there is a very real space for them to play in. And so there is a need for an overhaul of our education system to include and make room for manufacturing in a manner that is understandable and relatable, and in a manner that brings solutions that are very real within, the societies that we are operating in.
Absolutely critical point there. How do we develop manufacturing capacity or capabilities that respond to social challenges? Because ultimately, that is what is important. Very, very important point there. Just Mr. Waynard, just lastly from you, I think inferred from what Nokwezi has just mentioned, what policy instruments do you think we can apply to generate, a plausible impact on sustainable manufacturing principles and practices and so forth? So what policy instruments do you think we can strengthen or apply to ensure that, the manufacturing sector is sustainable or is thoroughly impacted?
The first policy is to get productivity. You cannot build a manufacturing sector without productivity, without global competitiveness. If you do not build competitiveness in every part of that business, Arafat, you mentioned the different processes that all need to work together, then we will keep exporting iron ore to India and have ArcelorMittal bring it back to us as fridges.
Oh man, yes.
So the ability to create productivity needs to be at the heart of every policy instrument. And you cannot do that by regulation. You cannot do that by import tariffs. You need to do that by the very skills and the very technology that run the factories. And it's always two sides. And Raymond, you made the point so well, that it's industry. How do we expect our technical colleges to produce what industry needs when even the lecturers have never seen the inside of a factory? So here is a couple of policy instruments that let's use the National Skills Fund, of course, to fund learners, wonderful, but let's also fund the lecturers. Let's get them shadowing into the factories. Let's get them that experience. I remember when I was a student at varsity, I listened intently to those lecturers that had industry experience. They were real. I could feel what they were talking about. The ones that were talking out of books, I fell asleep. So let's bridge industry and education. And Ms. Savella, you made the point as well. Let's start early. Let's bring that experience into the schools. So let's show our children what the whole gamut of possible careers looks like. Let's take a look what artists look like. Let's take STEM, science, technology, engineering, maths, and let's add A into it. Let's make it STEAM, that's science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths.
Absolutely.
Because art talks to everything. I mean, music itself is a science.
Yes, yes.
And thereby we start bringing in the real careers. If we take a look at Germany again, because that's where Festo is from, the 2/3 of the school leavers go and do apprenticeships, learnerships. 2/3. And very few go into university. So how do we get that mind change? How do we get all of our students to think, wow, what's the next apprenticeship I'm going to do? And how do we fling open the doors of industry The National Skills Fund, as good as it is, and as wonderful as the work is that the CETAs are doing, it's been a great excuse for industry to outsource their responsibility for training. I'll just pay my 1% skills levy and let government figure out the rest.
Sure.
What we have lost are the workplace placements for the learners, of course, but importantly for the lecturers that need to teach that back to the learners.
Absolutely.
So let's start there. And a great place, as again, is WorldSkills International. The next international competition is Shanghai in October 2020. Our South Africans need to start practicing now to be able to compete against the Russians, the Chinese, the Indians. For example, India took the gold medal in water technology. Yet South Africa is a water-starved country. We should be taking that gold medal. We should be practicing right now. We're not. So let's climb on there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Waynard. I love your approach to knowledge. It's truly, I don't want to say theatrical because I'm theatrical myself, but there's so much that we can learn in edutainment and how we package the ideas. And that's exactly what we're saying here. It's the packaging, it's the doing, it's the execution. Thank you so much to our panelists. May I ask for your closing remarks, just about a minute or so. Perhaps, Arafat, let's start with you because I know you need to be excused. Then we can have Mr. Patel, we can have Mrs. Tapela Unokwezi, and we can then have Mr. Waynard. And also just tell us where we can find you, any upcoming projects and so forth, so that our audience can follow. Arafat, over to you.
Yeah, Tabang. Anyway, thanks for inviting me for this panel discussion representing India. Got some extra tips to do better as a business coach. Awesome. And have some projects. The main thing is we have to connect each other. As Mr. Waynard said, it's all about connecting each other and going globally, while still we have to do it better locally also. So keep us connected. And I am also working on an event, a worldwide training event based on all this stuff, entrepreneurship, manufacturing, then other mindset, wellness, everything, by bringing 40 coaches from 40 countries, a huge mega symposium, first time in the history. It's gonna be happen in September 1st. Just connecting people all over the world. So let's stay connected and let's do something better for more business growth and business together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arafat. That was Arafat Cholasari, business development expert, manufacturing in India. Thank you very much. Mr. Patel? I think you're on mute, Mr. Patel.
I always mute myself to make sure that I listen to everybody else.
Sure.
Well, that brings me to that point. Einstein says that you cannot continue to do the same thing and expect a different result.
Sure.
We continue doing the same thing on trying to train and teach people the way we did, and we expect different results. There's shifts in the economy, there's shifts in manufacturing. Let us embrace those shifts. Let us make sure that we start using money wisely. We're not using our money wisely. Therefore, if we start using it wisely, we'll get a better result out of it. And how do we do that? I simply want to say, Dewey once said, if you continue to teach learners the way you were taught, you're doing them an injustice.
Sure.
We have to transform the way we train and teach. We have to make sure that we get a different result. Horst keeps on speaking or referring to WorldSkills, and I'm so happy, Horst, that you're still a great proponent thereof. It was a passion that I really lived while I was with CETAs and when I brought WorldSkills into the country many years ago. The intention with WorldSkills was to up the way we design, fashion designing. the way we manufacture, the way we do agriculture, was just to make sure that our benchmark reaches world standards. Now, let me tell you what happened to China. China joined World Skills 10 years after us. And last year, when China went to World Skills 2 years ago, they collected the most medals. Finland changed its whole education system based on World Skills. Switzerland, Germany. So what I'm simply saying, if we want to become this manufacturing economy, I'm not shooting down academia. I come from academia. I call myself a repentant artisan. And I like what one of the speakers said, if I can go back and just change my life, I would do so. Being the chief proponent of artisan training, let us start making sure that we get our kids into artisan training so that we transform our economy. And we do not teach them the way we were taught, but we teach them differently. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Patel. Quite profound. They teach them differently. We need to transform the way we train and teach. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. or rather Dr. Raymond Patel, CEO of Turupa. Can we have closing remarks from Mrs. Nokwezi Sapela?
So we agree that we need an education overhaul. And we agree that we need a mind shift in our approach to manufacturing. And as much as we uphold the importance of academia, it is time that we shine a strong spotlight. And this is a responsibility that requires all of us to join our hands and do it in a way that is responsible, but also in a way that opens up a world of opportunity. I think what is important is when we highlight the opportunities that are there, and particularly for social impact, then we will start to win. I also am excited about the very concept of STEAM versus STEM, because it is critical that we engage all both sides of our brains in our children's thinking. It is also important, and one thing that I have found that works is enabling cross collaboration. So enabling opportunities between the different custodians of the information and of the creative solutions. I'd like to add here, particularly because we have Arafat on the line, that there is opportunity for cross-border cooperation, so that we really do glean from each other without making it anything mindful. Be mindful about it, but not complex. Make it accessible, make it easy to reach out and have those think tanks that result in executable cross-border solutions. And so I think the manufacturing world is demanding that we take action now, because the education, as Mr. Patel quite rightly said, that if we teach our children differently, we're teaching them for the world that they are to participate in, rather than the world that we have come out of. And that, to me, is absolutely important.
Sure. Thank you so much. This panel is just on fire. It's winter, but I can feel the heat. Imagine the irony of that. That was Nokwezi Sapela, founder and CEO of World of Radiance. Please do check her out on social media. It's World of Radiance. The clothing and the items are out of this world. So she has a female and a male range. Do check her out there. Thank you so much, Nokwezi, for your contributions. And I believe the collaboration is going to start here. So you have Arafat in India, the textile industry. So I'm sure he'll be advising you on materials. And then you have Mr. Horst Waynard here, who's saying STEMs. So I guess Waynard here is your first, I don't want to say project, but let's try to attempt that STEMs there with the creative industry. So Nokwezi there. Over to you, Mr. Waynard, just your concluding remarks.
So by bridging industry and education. I know, I am both. I have one foot in industry, I have one foot in education. I'm an employer myself, and I generate employability through the work we do. And the ability to create industrialization depends much more on your people than on your policy.
Sure.
The automotive development policy, for example, in South Africa, has been a great success. It's hammered because it gets quite a lot of subsidies, but the subsidies go into the right place. So in policy, think about tax breaks. Think about, is the National Skills Fund, is the Skills Development Levy really doing what it's supposed to be doing? Are we incentivizing or disincentivizing industry to skill? Or are we creating an administrative nightmare to be able to skill the people we should be skilling? And once you have industry in the classroom, be it in the technical colleges, be it in the universities, be it in our primary and secondary schools, then the step from classroom into industry is easy. Thank you. Take a look at Festo, take a look at Festo Didactic, and get a feel for the amazing stuff we're doing around the world. I think we're the only company in the world that is both a leader in industrial education and industrial automation. And to have both of those in one factory creates global competitiveness. And that's how you build manufacturing.
Wow. Thank you so much. I don't think I'm going to add on that, otherwise I'm going to mess it up. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Horst Waynard from Festo, Southern and Eastern Africa, head of Didactic. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank each and every one of you for your time. Wow, thought-provoking conversation. And I think there's a lot of questions and comments that are coming through. So just after we introduce the next panel, we'll be posting those questions, and I believe people will try and get in touch with you on social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever that is used. But thank you so much for your contributions. And as Cape Media, it is our responsibility to take this content and make sure that we knock on the relevant doors to make sure that it's applied accordingly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the Skills Development for Sustainable Manufacturing panel discussion. I am completely blown away. I never run out of words, but today I am out of words because that left me thinking about, what initiatives are we doing to ensure capacity building in our communities, and also mentioning critical thoughts around, industrialization. It certainly does depend on people development more than policy initiatives and policy development. And how do we develop capacity in the manufacturing industry to respond to social challenges? I think that was so critical. And it calls for social entrepreneurs to rise and social entrepreneurs to dominate the mainstream economy. And after this, ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to go through for a short ad break, and then we'll be introducing the next panel discussion, which is vocational and technical skills as a driver for entrepreneurship and employment. Please don't forget to post on social media, #SkillsSummit2021. Stay tuned.
The community enterprise exhibition. Key question, why did we engage with the community? We always focus on the youth, we always focus on our students. But where do our students come from? They come from the community. And how can we grow communities where students see role models experiencing entrepreneurship? That led to our discussion in 2018 to say we need to look at combining community entrepreneurs. So today we are standing at an awesome event. An event filled with vibrancy, filled with opportunity, connecting SMMEs with awesome opportunity. And I need to reiterate this, that this is the first year we're doing it. It's a pioneering year for us, and our aspiration is to do this on an annual basis.
My name is Setu Stefani from Kailicha Travel and Tours. We are based in Kailicha, a tour company based in Kailicha, operating since 2013, so close to 7 years now. We offer township tours, customized tour packages, flights, accommodation, and transfers. Also, in partnership with MSC Cruises, we also offer cruise experiences and car rental in partnership with Bitfist, yes. CFERI, an initiative, a brilliant initiative for all entrepreneurs who want to grow their business, who want to sustain their business most importantly, and who want to learn new lessons or change their negative aspects about their business.
The purpose of it all, entrepreneurs don't have a platform to showcase their product offering. They're sometimes the best kept secret. So how do we bring visibility to SMMEs? How do we connect SMMEs with financial support and with non-financial support? The platform today creates two critical stakeholders coming together, community entrepreneurs with financial stakeholders and non-financial stakeholders. We raise up the credibility, and that is another key reason of why we have engaged on this path to showcase entrepreneurs at this community enterprises exhibition. And finally, profitability. So it's visibility, it's credibility, and profitability. Lots of businesses close down because they don't have sufficient cash flow. Why not? Because of market. And by doing this today, raising their visibility, it will lead to orders, it will lead to new clients, it will lead to interest from business to business as well as business to customer. Doing that in an environment that's structured gives them credibility, trustworthiness, and ultimately that will lead to profitability.
The training from CFE was amazing. One, I knew some of the information that they had, but how they said it was amazing. It made more sense because, when you're in a journey, you get information along the way, but the way they tell, the way they teach, the way they're so open to, willingness to teach and show us, ways on how to do certain things that we're already doing, but easier ways, and get in contact with more people. And the classes were very interactive. So now the journey is starting our own factory, which will be able to open up opportunities to hire more people to work for the shop, and also have our social impact quite visible within the community, because that's what we are about. We want people to be encouraged, we want people to be inspired, we want people to know that even if you have different thoughts, your surroundings should not limit you. So this event is amazing. I've never been to an event like this before, where there's a lot of entrepreneurs, where the focus gets to be on the business itself and then another business. So we get different opportunities to talk to different people, and different people coming to us and us going to them. And the fact that we get to network with different companies from different spaces that we didn't even know, and we get to ask questions, because some companies or some organizations are far from us. I mean, we're in a township. As much as we're running a business, sometimes you struggle to even get money to go to town, because the business is new. The business is still, trying to even find itself. So this space is quite healthy and encouraging and just friendly. Yes.
As SIDA, our mandate is very clear. is that we need to support SMMEs. And then we do that in association and partnership with various stakeholders in the province. So when we were approached from the Center for Entrepreneurship Rapid Incubator to work with them, to support, township businesses. And then you'd recall that township businesses or township economy is one of our priority areas. So we are on board, and then we are happy that this has now been announced that it's going to be an annual event, and then it's a journey that we are prepared, to go with the incubator for the next for many years.
Our expectations. When you dream about an event and when it actually happens, you will see if it meets it or if it exceeds it. And in this case today, I must say, it exceeded our wildest expectations. We had our entrepreneurs showcasing products. I had a particular product in mind that they stated to me in the workshops. It went beyond that. The workmanship, the quality, the way in which they presented itself, it all speaks to them putting in the effort. And on top of that, amazing. We had amazing stakeholders.
Welcome back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is the 14th Leadership Skills Development Summit. If you've just joined us, you missed out on a bit, but it's about to get heated. And I hope you are still visiting our virtual exhibition summit. And also as you walk in with your laptop and your fingers, you'll probably be exposed to some of the stands and the brands and companies that are there. Please do visit it. And don't forget to hashtag Skills Summit 2021. I am privileged and honored to introduce our last panel for the day. The panel discussion is vocational and technical skills as a driver of entrepreneurship and employment. And it will be facilitated by Ms. Giselle McIntyre, who is the group HR manager at Nimtech. Yes, sorry, I said McIntyre instead of McIntyre. So welcome to you, Giselle, and over to you as you'll be introducing our panelists, and we look forward to hearing what you guys have to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Tabang. Welcome to the panelists and good afternoon to everyone who's joined in. Our topic is probably the most heated of all of them. I did really enjoy the previous panelists though. So we also have our work cut out for us if any of you were looking at that one. So what I'd like to do is just to let each one of you have a moment or two just to introduce where you are from. But before we do that, just to highlight that we're speaking specifically about vocational and technical skills and development of that in terms of building on self-employment, entrepreneurship, and employment. You'll notice I add in self-employment because I sometimes think we forget about the one-man show, who is quite frankly putting food on his or her table, but is not going to create a company as an entrepreneur that would then employ a whole bunch of other people. So if that can just perhaps get the show going, and perhaps Abe, seeing as you are on my left and first on my screen, if you could perhaps just start by introducing yourself and what exactly it is that you would like to bring to the table today in our panel. Abe, can you just unmute yourself, please?
Thank you for that, Gazelle. Good afternoon, Program Director.
Recording in progress.
And all the partners in the room and the panelists. I am Abram Oliver, and I'm representing Falls Bay College. We are based here in the Western Cape, the Cape Town Metropole, one of 3 TVET colleges. And we are speaking towards, I have unmuted myself. Can you not hear me, Gazelle? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you clearly, thanks.
Awesome. I think I am in a loop here.
Okay, it looks like Abram's having a bit of trouble there. Yershin, perhaps let's try you first and see if we can come back to Abram then.
Well, thank you very much, Gazelle, and a very good afternoon to all the panelists and the very exciting Skills Development Summit. I'm the current Chief Executive Officer for the Chemical Industries Sector Education and Training Authority, referred to as CHEETA, which facilitates a large number of skills development and training programs in the chemical sector. I am hoping, Giselle, that we would get into, as I said, the conversation around vocational and technical skills that are required for the young entrepreneurs. But since it's Youth Month in particular, what needs to be done for youth entrepreneurship as an apex priority for the country, for that matter. I'll be guided by you, but I think for me, first and foremost, is just we certainly are looking at a need to reimagine, for me at least, skills development in a digital age. And hopefully we'll get an opportunity to expand more about that through the conversation. Thanks, Giselle.
Thank you very much. And yes, I definitely have a soft spot for the youth, and I do believe we should be looking at it this close to Youth Day. Thank you. Abram, is your mic working now again? Shall we give you another go before we get to Simpiwe?
Thank you, Gazelle. Can you hear me clearly now?
Yes,
Awesome.
I definitely can.
Apologies for that audio delay. I'm Abraham Oliver, and I'm quite excited to be here today to represent Falls Bay College. We are one of the only TVET colleges in the Western Cape that have an operational center for entrepreneurship. So our focus is to look at how do we assist young people to use their artisanal skills and transfer that into a business that speaks to the needs within the community by adding value. I particularly want to focus on mindset. So how do we transfer the shift from a job seeker mindset to a job creator mindset, particularly in the month of youth, with the background of the high youth unemployment. So that is how do we interface entrepreneurial skills to all the engineering and other artisanal skills.
Thank you. Yes, that will be most interesting to look at. Simpiwe, welcome. If you could perhaps just give us a few words as well before we get started.
Good afternoon, Giselle, and good afternoon to colleagues. The name is Simpiwe Tobela, Chairman of the Board of MICT. As you would know, MICT has got a few subsectors that include ICT, media and communication technologies, and advertising and the film industry. And in the context of the 4IR, and to be brief, I have a sense that actually MICT CETA cuts across every single industry, because if you look at digitization and automation, we got to be right at the cutting edge of the developments there. So that's our focus and presence, and I would like to just stop at that for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm sure for any of you looking at this now, you will notice there were other names on the list. Some people have unfortunately not been able to join, but I have a feeling that between these three gentlemen, we're going to have a very interesting session. So I'm going to throw out perhaps just bring in a little of my own personal experience. At Nemtech, we are manufacturing, the manufacturing environment. In fact, if you go and have a look at your electric fence, you'll probably see our name on your electric fence somewhere on the little yellow sign. And one of the things that we do is we're an accredited skills development provider for electrical fence installers. So Nemtech doesn't install fences. We train the electrical fence installers that come to your house. And the reason for that is between us and many other manufacturers in our environments of creating that platform of skill for people who do want to be self-employed, entrepreneurial. Some people obviously are doing that because they've had no choice in the matter, and especially in the last year and a half, we've had a tremendous amount of people who are no longer employed formally. But there are also massive companies who would make use of. So my question is, what are the skills? And you come from different sectors, and that's really why I want to ask the question. So what are the skills that as a population, as a country, even as a continent and as a world, what are the skills we should be looking for that will allow someone to go, I cannot find a job in the world of formal employment, or I'm looking for a specific kind of environment where I will fit as a person, where I can flourish with a skill that I can obtain that has relevance and is benchmarked. I'm a believer in the landscape of skills development. And what is it that I can go and look for? What should I be focusing on, especially as the youth of today? So perhaps if we could start with Yoshin again, and then go to Simpiwe, and then to Abraham, if we could do it in that order this time, if you're okay with that.
Okay, thank you, Giselle, for the question, and also to kickstart the discussions. I think certainly what we found, at least in the chemical industry space, and I want to perhaps build on what my colleague, Mr. Tobela, has indicated, digital skills and digital literacy is now, becoming a top priority for success. And so being able to use a device and to use it well, being able to access technology and bridge the digital divide, and not make the wrong assumptions that everyone does have access to the internet or for access to various infrastructure, I think is quite a top priority for success if we're talking skills development. And so I think first and foremost for me is a change in gear from your traditional skills towards basic digital and digital literacy skills going forward. But that, what we're also finding, we did a focus group study with a number of companies in the pharmaceuticals subsector, which falls under us as the chemical CETA. And we looked at channel delivery managers in particular. And a number of the channel delivery managers lacked basic skills in the sense of resource management skills, for example, or looking at communication skills, basic negotiation skills for that matter. So in as much as your technical skills are quite essential for success, what we're finding is that there are critical skills gaps, and we have identified those as a chemical CETA. And these pertain to collaborative problem solving, for example, which is becoming more essential for success. And if you look at your entrepreneurs, for that matter, a recent partnership in collaboration with the University of Johannesburg, which we graduated 80 entrepreneurs in chemical detergents manufacturing, soap manufacturing, and cosmetics manufacturing. And the results of that were quite phenomenal, where we had more than 25% of those SMMEs actually having increased their revenues by more than 50% in 1 year. And again, it was not just the technical skills training, but it was your business skills training. It was accompanied by an NQF level 5, which included coaching, which included group mentorship from your master's students at the University of Johannesburg. So in essence, what we found from those two case studies is that it's really dependent on having a multi-pronged approach and a variety of skills, both technical, but included in that is your basic communication, collaboration, problem solving, and critical skills gaps, which are becoming more essential for success, especially for those venturing into entrepreneurship. Thanks, Sajida.
Thank you, Yoshin. Very interesting. And yes, I'm very glad to see that the one-dimensional new venture creation has moved a little further into something that's more holistic, because it is very true. If you don't create some of the additional skills necessary, anyone who's been in business and worked in the world of work will know that you can't just have that one thing. You need to have many. So very, very interesting. Simpiwe, your take on it?
Yeah, thanks. I'm just going to add on what Yashin has addressed. But I think there's, right from the beginning, one of the key things that I think the country needs to address is numeracy skills. I think for different sectors of the economy, without addressing numeracy skills, we will have a problem with the supply of different set of skills across different sectors of the economy. And I think it's a very fundamental thing that probably when we have time, we can go back and ask about the structure of the education system, whether it produces what we expect it to produce, and whether the teachers that are supposed to produce the skills that we require are actually adequately equipped for the necessary skills. That's the first part. The second part is digital skills, and I think the digital skills, of course, is linked to the first part that I've just addressed, the numeracy skills. Everything is going to work back to it in one form or the other. But digital skills, and my sense is that we've got different kinds of problems if you look at the country, because access to internet would enhance that digital skill that you're talking about. When we have broadband access, which is very limited, and internet generally that is limited, it doesn't help you enough to address the issue of access to digital platforms and therefore developing digital skills. It more affects the rural and the poor, and the divide there, the digital divide is very still there to see for us all, and which is why I believe that the ERRP, Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, addresses amongst other things the focuses the skills development to dealing with the race, the class, the geography, and so on, because those are areas that are hit the most, because it's a preserve of the largely urban areas that you would have access to these digital skills. I think for me, those are the things that we need to be addressing, and if we are able to deal with that part, we'll be able to then respond to various other aspects of the sector requirements in terms of skill. Thank you.
Yes, wow, what an interesting point, and so true. I think perhaps that's what we're trying to encourage, is entrepreneurs who know how to build on those platforms and to build within the rural areas in those environments. I always remember the beautiful story of the young man in Zambia who built his own Wi-Fi pretty much from nothing. And you almost want those kind of things to start happening. And perhaps that is, again, what we need to be encouraging, is to people think outside of the box of, oh, well, now there's no mug and bean here, so I can't. Abraham, your ideas?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's a very thought-provoking question in terms of skills. When we look at our young people today, we are particularly looking at how do they blend their core skills with soft skills? How do they blend their logic with creativity? How do they increase their imagination? There's the sustainable development goals. They're coming from communities where there are problems. And how do they apply that logic, the technical skills that they've learned in order to solve that problem? So it's a lot of, as you've mentioned, out of the box thinking, innovativeness, because as the world is changing, the only constant is change. We are in a pandemic, and how do I now think differently about the tools that I have? How do I use the tools that I've got in such a way to solve a problem? And it was mentioned earlier that we must understand our reality. And our reality speaks to a shrinking economy out there, not having enough jobs. But how do I now use what I have? I can't go back, but I can look at the future and change my destiny. So for me, it's a crossover between those core skills that you've got with creativity skills. So logic and creativity, left brain, right brain, connecting with one another, understanding market economics, and how do I then step into this space and add value? Because I think we must all become active citizens, and active citizenship means making a difference where I am with the skill set that I have.
Well said. Okay, so we know there are skills that are needed. Now, where do we get them? I mean, I'm not necessarily now asking you to advertise your sector, but just as leaders and thought leaders in your environments as well. So I am in Kuruman. I have finished matric, thankfully. Now, what do I do? I mean, where do I go? How do I now create anything? How do I make sure that I'm realistic in terms of what I'm doing? I chose Kuruman for a reason. I did a lot of coaching there in my younger days for some other reason. And one of the things that you find, especially in areas where there isn't a lot of urban assistance and help like we have in the Joburgs of the world, is that young people are extremely over idealistic, let's make it soft, in terms of what it is that they're going to be able to go and do one day in their lives. There's still so many of them that don't know about learnerships, that don't understand what kinds of systems are in place. What can we do to help get the message out there? Perhaps, Yoshin, if we just keep the rotation going and start with you again.
Thanks, Giselle, again for that question. I think very importantly, especially, I'm glad you used an example such as Kuruman, because we don't do. Let me rather say we do a lot for the rural communities, but perhaps we could do more in terms of higher impact projects to ensure that we get larger numbers of our rural students. I suppose it starts with, again, I think Mr. Tobela made a very important point. Let's start at the basic education level. Career guidance is one of the 8 strategic outcomes that we have as CETAs. Ensuring career guidance is provided for learners. Many learners in the chemical sector do not know what a chemical operator does. So how do you become a chemical plant operator, for example? I'm using the example of chemical plant operator. It's one of our top 3 skills in the sector right now. So the possibility of actually gaining a job once you've finished with your qualification is much higher than any other occupation. So our top 3 occupations currently are for chemical engineers, boiler makers, and for chemical plant operators. More than 8,000 jobs exist for chemical plant operators. So I think it starts with the career guidance, and so creating a pipeline for change, providing information at a very basic level, ensuring the young people understand what options they have. If you speak to those in our sector, they'll tell you we've got one of the best mechatronics qualification, to the extent that the Germans actually come to us to ask us, how do you devise a framework for mechatronics? But many young people do not understand what is mechatronics, how do I get involved in mechatronics, what is the courses I need to take at a basic education level, and then excel in those courses. And so creating a culture of excellence at the very school foundation, so that when you are able to then apply, we then need to provide the support, whether it be bursaries for you to apply and marketing those bursaries adequately. And so working together in collaboration with our TVET colleges, with universities, etc. I think greater collaboration is another success factor for me, because once you collaborate more, you're able to disseminate more information and increase impact going forward. And so, we create a pipeline for success where you're able to get bursaries. But what we've also found in the new intervention on our side and across many other CETAs as well, is you could, on the one hand, embrace new technologies as well. We've embraced, as Cheta, virtual reality simulated training, VR simulated training. In the next 5 months, we hope to roll this out into rural communities in particular. So as a young person in Kuruman, you don't have to go to a plant. in Joburg or in Durban, where most chemical facilities are located. But you can actually undertake a 3 to 4 month training course in a virtually simulated environment to bind that with a 1 or 2 week program where you have actual work experience. And so the risks are less, the costs are less for industry, but more so a young learner in Kurumani is able to receive training which they would not have otherwise received because there are no chemical Kurumani, as most of them are in certain designated. So I think it's combining new technology and addressing the bottlenecks as well that exist. And I think my last point would be, we're getting closer to industry, working closer with industry and understanding what industry wants, their needs, and then having these new programs. I mean, right now we are assisting unblocking a bottleneck for student debt. Many chemical engineers are unable to get their certificates and acquire a job because they were unable to pay their student debts from university. So once you unblock those blockages, you create this pipeline for success and then work closer with industry to understand what are their needs and priorities, not now, but going into the future. I think just one last point, Giselle, from my side. Our petroleum subsector, to give you an example, has said to us that in the next 5 to 10 years, they see increasing growth in the hydrogen economy. And as the hydrogen economy grows, what are the skill sets that need to be accompanied and the skills, occupations to accompany the growth in the hydrogen economy? So as we work closer with our petroleum subsector, we then have skills plans aligned to the economic reconstruction and recovery plan, but aligned to the growing needs of business and enterprise going forward. Thanks, Giselle.
Thank you. Yeah, building on what you've said about getting industry to buy in, I think that's a core function. I've always stood with my feet in both the CETA environment and the world of work environment, and it's always the one plea is please listen to what industry actually wants. That the actual employer wants, and to make sure that the skills are vocational in nature, that they are actually connected to industry and to what industry needs, and that you are not teaching someone to fault find on a piece of equipment that hasn't been in existence for 20 years in industry. So it's good to see and hopefully in that way encourage young people as well to also take their heads out of the sand. And, if you only know about 5 jobs, you're only going to try and look for 5 jobs. So I agree with you for us making sure people are aware that there are so many careers out there, and not just the 5 that you personally happen to be aware of. Sampiwe, your thoughts?
Probably let's extend the point by Yashan, which is very important, collaboration and partnerships. It's a very central point to the question. If I'm going to make an example, at MICT, the 4 IR qualifications that we've developed and approved recently, all those were done in collaboration with the industry. You get the industry because that's the pace at which things are changing. If you sit in your ivory tower and develop these qualifications with the hope that you will be responding, the industry, by the time you approve that, the industry has moved on. And yet the most important thing is to keep pace with them, and that partnership shouldn't be an accidental and incidental partnership, but it must be a thoroughgoing partnership. And they help you to kind of spread that word about the possibilities that are out there of new skills that are available and new things that youth could be interested in taking up. That's the first point. The second point is that one area that I think we are not doing extremely well on as a country is what the minister cautions us about. The Minister Nzimande says these sitters are not sitters of Johannesburg, of Sandton. These sitters are sitters of the country, and they have to be found and in practical ways everywhere, not just having an office, but programs must be there that raise awareness amongst the people in a particular geographic space. In this case, I've said, we've said as a board to management, look, if you do not understand what is the economic what are economic realities of Kuruman as an example, and you are unable to provide responses there, it means you got to be very conscious in understanding what makes Kurmani tick, and therefore what sort of digital skills would be required there. That means working closer to the people there, the industry and the society, the schools in the area. Then you start understanding what needs to be provided, so that when you structure your programs, when you structure your qualifications, when you structure your budget, you are responding to a need. You're not just ticking box that we've got these qualifications, we've got this amount of money, but what does it solve in the society? That means going out there. We've just recently, as the last point on this point, we've just gone out to Mateo College recently, about 3 weeks ago, which has got various campuses around Bloemfontein. And the sort of information that you start getting there from the school management, the TVET college management and the learners, you start understanding that we are not actually giving adequate information that we should be giving. And we're not getting solutions enough that we should be getting, because some of the solutions come from the very people that you are actually sharing information with. And that becomes a very important thing to strengthen that partnership. Lastly, the partnerships between SETAs themselves. I'm speaking from a SETA point of view now, and I'm not going to emphasize some of the points that Yashan made, adopting TVET colleges and so on. But then across the SETAs, I think we need to strengthen partnerships, because as I was saying in my opening, for example, the ICT and digitization cuts across different industries, and no one SETA is likely to go on its own and solve all the problems. In all likelihood, we would have to be in partnership. I was making an example elsewhere in another summit that I was speaking on just about 2 weeks ago, that I'm a board member amongst others in a tea estate that's in rural areas in the Eastern Cape. But then the cost that we are incurring there of production, the cost of production far exceeds the returns on investment that we make. But one of the things, it's digitizing that. I need MERSITA to be there. I need AgriSETA to be there. And we can join together as MICT SETA and probably any other SETA that's relevant to ensure that we bring the skill there. Without that, we are unable to then resolve the problems. It means all of us have to go out there and sell what we have and inform the communities of what we do and what we are potentially doing and what the industry is expecting from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Simpiwe. It's always nice to see when someone is actually passionate about their environment. I think people get a little angry with the SETAs very often because there's a lot of bureaucracy, but it's so nice to have a platform like this where people can also see that there is passion and belief and truth. And I particularly liked your what does it solve aspect of a qualification. And perhaps, Abram, that's good for you because you are an FET.
Indeed, Gazelle. I want to pick up what Simpiwe said and Yersin said on 2 points in terms of responsiveness and partnership. I think we need to co-create if we want to ensure that our economy gets revitalized. And Valsbeck College took a strategic decision when they looked at being a leader in skills development, being responsive to the economy, that the gateway to education is one, further education. The gateway to self-employment is also very meaningful. But the third decision was taken, a gateway to self-employment. And in order to enhance that and to make that the reality, we had to connect with partners, the Department of Small Business Development on board to create a center for entrepreneurship. And at the center, we look at how do we equip those with the skill set that they've acquired through vocational and technical skills to now add business learning to it, understanding of the economy. How do we mentor them? Because a lot of our students don't have any mentors. They don't have any role models. So how do we mentor them? How do we coach them? But a business is not a business if there's not a market. So how do we look at market linkages? How do we look at financial linkages? And we work closely with the NYDA to support young people with grants. We work closely with CEDA for non-financial support. But very importantly, which I want to add on, because we spoke about skills earlier on, when you develop a business, the jockey is the most influential person in that business. It's that individual, the entrepreneur. And how do we develop that entrepreneur to believe in himself, to understand what he's best at? And talking to partnerships. In our journey, we've worked closely with partners, for example, the Beers, Enterprise Supply Development, and getting these young technicians, a young graduate who have completed his business in welding, and now he's providing services to these corporates. But also partners such as W&R CETA, where they're looking at, there's a lot of informal traders who need support. We will then come on board, and how do we sustain them now, particularly last year during COVID, when COVID hit March 2020, we started in August 2020 with that particular project. So again, I think responsiveness is critical, but partnership makes the reality and your vision comes through. So I want to add on to this point, Gazelle, that entrepreneurship is a strategic imperative, and our focus is how do we look at vocational and technical skills as a driver of entrepreneurship and employment. And because it's a strategic imperative, I think it is important that it should be part of the bigger community out there, be it CETAs, be it government, and how do we collectively come together to make sure that we make a difference, that we knock or at least mitigate this huge unemployment rate. If we look at the expanded unemployment rate for young people, which is close to 60 to 70%. So I want to agree with Simpiwe and Yersin that strategic partnerships is critical, but responsiveness to what is needed at this time so that we can ensure that our economy gets back on track and young people can look at the future with hope, but can also look at themselves and say, how do I shift my mind in order to be a co-creator and create a job for myself?
Well said. Yes, I think we have made an important point in this panel that this is not something that can be done by one particular person, one particular sector. It can't be done by public, it can't be done by private. It needs to be done as something that is a holistic approach. And perhaps if we even just think about it, if we just think of ourselves as parents and as aunts and uncles, perhaps that's where we should be looking at, is what is it that we are all doing in our everyday lives that will allow us to collaborate to bring together all of these different components. I think entrepreneurship for a very long time was sort of seen as the golden bullet that would kill unemployment. I still don't know if that can honestly be true, because technically the discussion is that an entrepreneur creates employment. So how does it kill unemployment when it has to first build itself into that? And perhaps that's where we are going. We perhaps need to be focusing back on the little things. So my last question for today, because unfortunately we have time limits, is what about skills programs? I've always been a big believer, both from a skills development provider point of view, but also from an industry point of view. You know, the Nemtechs of the world can't send people away for 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, whatever. You know, training that is done by, especially by people we already have employed, needs to be fast and needs to be very specific in terms of what it is that we're doing. We don't have time. And even though we would love to, we don't have the will to be able to say, let's take away somebody for 3 years to go and finish a qualification. Things are here and now. The just-in-time age-old concept of training is there. But at the same time, and I'm most definitely an ambassador of it, I want benchmarked. I want best. I don't want to send my staff on something, or my new learners in an environment on something that was thumbsucked on a Saturday afternoon by someone. So how do we build to a point where there's a partnership between industry and all of the different sectors, the colleges, even the universities, to get those just-in-time skills? We live in a YouTube environment. Most people learn how to change a tire nowadays by looking at a YouTube video. So how are we building so that these future-focused, just-in-time components become part of our lives? And perhaps, Yoshin, if we can start with you again.
Thanks, Giselle. I'm glad you're now addressing the question of how. We've talked a lot about the what and the why, but I think it's an important question to ask. And I think one of the exciting new ways of innovation, and so for me, I think the solution really lies in innovation-driven skills development, where in this current environment, I think Abraham and Simpiwe also touched upon it, highly volatile, highly complex, people going back to the concept of the VUCA environment of 1987, bringing it back to today's context. So if you look at today's context, we certainly need to innovate more. And as we innovate, then look at new ways of thinking and doing about skills development. And I agree with you, the skills programs over and above our learnerships, our internships, and our traditional artisan development programs, which are essential. And I think we also have an artisan center of specialization with false pay on rigors, for example. But as that continues, I've had a number of discussions with our gas manufacturing sector, and just to illustrate the point, in which industry identified that there's a need, for example, for maintenance planners in the sector of gas manufacturing. And we then developed a new concept related to the question of how do we collaborate? How do we put into practice? Because I don't think it's sufficient to sign collaborative agreements and then they pile up on your table with nothing much happening on the ground. Yes, we should be signing collaborative agreements, and we should also look at non-sector-based collaborative agreements. I really like what Mr. Tobela said, because why should we as a chemical SETA focus on the chemical SETA role players or stakeholders? Surely we could look at non-industry partners and collaborations, partnering with the banks, partnering with IT companies, which are not within our sector, but offer significant increase in value creation for that matter. And so one of the concepts we're exploring is an industry hub. And what these innovation industry hubs would bring industry closer in a 6-month bootcamp type program, whereby in a very short space of time, you work closer with industry to ensure the standards are met, and you at the same time partner with institutions of higher learning, which are able to provide not only the qualification, but the credentials that would be required, because the credential is also quite important for that matter. And whether it's working with your TVET colleges, your institutions of higher learning, together with industry in a 6-month type of industry hub, that would in a very short space of time, using technology and new innovative ways, provide a skills program, whether it be for maintenance planning, as an example that I've given you in our sector, or it could be for your traditional or new and emerging skills. And I think just I highlighted that as an illustration of how I think if we want to address the issue of collaboration, we could look at new innovative concepts such as industry hubs. And linked to that, we had a discussion with Sasol, which is our largest stakeholder in the chemical sector. And they said to us that as an industry, not only in their perspective, there's a rising demand for data analysts. So it's not just about welders and riggers anymore. It's also about new and emerging occupations such as data analysts. And we need skills programs for these type of occupations such as data analysts, which the industry requires more than anything else. So I think for me, just to answer your question, I do agree we need to scale up skills programs and perhaps take new innovative ways which are non-sector based, more alternative thinking, different forms of thinking, and more tech-driven type of skills programs, digital skills programs for the future. Thanks, Giselle.
Thank you very much. Simpiwe, your thoughts?
Right. I think the key thing here is industry, because they would know best about what's required when. And so I'll make an example. We've been working, for example, with the SAMDRA, which is a South African association of device repairers, and we're developing a qualification there and skills programs that must respond to what they require. But then you would know the cell phone industry, as an example, it's changing quite rapidly. And if you then stick to the old that you knew 18 months ago and new things come, and you're still stuck on that, and you do not know where the industry is, in all likelihood, you will be left behind and be irrelevant. That's one. Two is that I had a meeting with the QCTO recently, and I was raising a point about the qualifications generally. Qualifications that outlive their relevance, and it makes no sense to have some of the qualifications that you still have now, even those that need to be renewed, they don't get renewed, or those that have to have changes here and there, it doesn't happen in time. And I think we need to be agile a bit as training authorities, and in the whole value chain has to be a little bit agile and be responsive to what the changes are in the market. With the pandemic that has just hit us now, it has proven quite obviously that being sluggish in taking action is going to be very dire, and probably will have dire consequences for the entire economy, as it were. So it is very important that we should think about agility and relevance every single time when we respond to the industry and the market requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Simpiwe. Yes, I think agile, hey, being fast on our feet for what we're doing, and perhaps cutting through some of the bureaucracy, which I'm sure, anyone in any skills environment knows there are certain things that have to be there, but I do think we need to be looking at that. Abram, your thoughts?
Yes, Gazelle, I think Tabela mentioned it, that agility, how do we, and we focus on that a lot. We call it, how do you fail fast and learn fast? Because you can't take 6 months to find out that this idea is not working. So we have designed a structured non-credit bearing program in partnership with our advisory board, which consists of the universities, CPUT, consists of DDAT, Department of Economic Development and Tourism, CEDA, etc., to come up with a program. And we have examples of graduates who've completed their masters in HR, but now wants to start up an HR business. So how do we get them going within that 6 months? This person have been earning an income, so he now needs to get to market. And how do we shorten this runway for this particular individual? We then bring on mentors from Rotary International to say, I have worked in my own business for 30 to 40 years. How do I come alongside and be the mirror for this individual, be a soundboard, so that he or she don't make the wrong decisions? Because as you know, if you make a wrong decision, that might be cutthroat in terms of a small business and you lose all your money. And I like what Yersin said in terms of the golden circle. We've looked at the why, the what, but now we look at the how. And one of the activations that we look at particularly is to have annual activations where we ask young people to think innovatively, come up with an idea, and we've partnered with future managers who supply entrepreneurial books, and we're saying, that curriculum haven't changed, but let's see how we can now get these young people not to think about an idea for a business plan, for a summative assessment, but think of an idea that will solve a real problem. And that is bridging the gap between theory and reality of what's happening within the world of work. We've just started the Mersita project for 30 unemployed youth. And I must say, we're in our first month of starting up with them. There are 13 graduates within that cohort. We asked them, what is the challenge? They could not secure a job because their relevance in terms of experience they don't have, the gap between what they've studied and what is now required in the workplace. So again, you need skills program that is responsive and that is agile. I also just want to add as a conclusion, as an incubator, and I think Pillay alluded to that, that we have now are looking at putting in a coding lab and a digital hub, drone facility, because we must also be responsive to the future. And how do we respond to that future? And in terms of developing that program, we need to work with the experts in that field so that we can transfer that 3-year degree diploma into a period that brings out the practical nuggets for a young entrepreneur who's aspiring to get up and running. So I definitely agree with what you said earlier. We need to look at programs that is impactful, but that does add value. And the value, who determines that value? Ultimately, industry. If you don't have any customers anymore, they gave you a message: we don't need your business anymore. So how do you make sure you stay responsive, you stay on the cutting edge, and you respond to the real need, and you differentiate yourself? And it was said on the earlier panel, productivity and competitiveness. How do we drive innovativeness and competitiveness through our programs that meets the reality of the market out there?
Thank you very much. I think that's very clearly put. Well, gentlemen, I think our time is pretty much up. We've gone a little over, but I think we're okay with that. I would like to say thank you. It's always nice to hear that there is more than just the normal table talk, but that there are definitely actions and plans in place. And I think I want to challenge everyone who's watching today and who may watch later on as well, that don't just believe nothing is happening. I think it's important, if you're not sure if there's something happening, ask the question. And perhaps that's what we should be teaching our youth as well. There is nothing out there for them. I know that there is that message all the time, we hear it every day, but there is a lot going on and we need to celebrate it and perhaps correctly so market it better, get it out there and get it out to a broader population group as well, in terms of what it is that we are doing, why we're doing it, who's doing it, when it's happening. And agreed again, I think skills programs, although I'm a great believer in the full qualifications, skills programs are part of that parcel. And if nothing else, are then cheaper and quicker to get to than any of the other options that are out there for someone who's trying to get it on their own. I would like us to each, if you could all just give your own final opinion. My last question is a esoteric one. In a perfect world, if we didn't have to worry about anything, what would you do within your environment to encourage entrepreneurship, to build employment, to build those skills, and even if it's just the will for people to be able to look after themselves and then ultimately look after others? Yershin, if I could start with you.
Thanks, Giselle. I'll be short, I know, because of time. I think for me, two key things. One is that we can no longer train for the sake of training. Training has to be accompanied by business growth. I think Abraham touched on that point. And for me, this means in an ideal and typical world that we should be focusing more on growing our small and medium enterprises, and especially our youth-owned small and medium enterprises. And that's one of the targets we've set. Our economic reconstruction and recovery plan is a target for 5,000 youth-owned and other SMMEs. And one of what we're trying to do as the Chemical CETA is to contribute in the next 5 years to supporting at least 1,000 of these SMMEs with skills programs for development. The other point, I think, just finally for me, is success is a two-way street. Yes, you have rights, but you also have responsibilities. And I always say to young people, when you have access to Google the right things, not the wrong things. Google what opportunities are available for you. When you have that access, you're more likely, as you said, Giselle, to find that there is a lot out there for you. But you have to actually have the right mindset, the right attitude, and actually seize the opportunities that are available there, that are out there for you. It's not going to come to you on a silver plate. So I think for me, as I said, it's a two-way street. There are rights and responsibilities. And for me, it's all about collaboration, more collaboration. And I think that's going to be the success factor in a resource constrained environment. But again, if we had an ideal, typical world, I would say, the multi-pronged approach of training together with enterprise growth. Thanks, Giselle.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Simpiwe, last words from you.
Well, for me, it's the entrepreneurship. I think from an academic point of view, if I'm choosing the right word, I think from early schooling needs to be embedded in the curriculum. I think ideally we should not teach kids how to get an employment, but rather how do they create employment. And that's the first part. Then the second is that ideally is that manufacturing and consumption that is inward looking, without necessarily saying we live in an island and closed borders to the rest of the world. That is mythical. You can't close your borders. But then I think the manner in which we are importing stuff, I think we do import manufactured here at home. I don't think we've got adequate confidence in our own abilities to do things. Ideally, we should be giving small businesses more of an opportunity to produce, to manufacture, and that would, on the other side, trigger consumption, which is internal, and keep what Chika Onika calls a spider web phenomenon, and keep the rand circulating as much more as it can.
Thank you. Yes, what a nice reference. And Abram, from you?
Thank you, Giselle. I would just want to say that instill entrepreneurial thinking at the early age. Let's start very early with instilling entrepreneurial thinking in our young people. And as Mr. Tubela said, that we don't train for job seeking, but train for job creating. I think that we need to look at not just being successful, but adding ultimate value. And I want to end off with the words of Jim Collins, where he wrote in this book about how do you go from good to great. And one of the things he says in that Venn diagram, and that where's the partnership comes in for me with the CETAs, with the corporate, is understand what you're passionate about. We all are passionate about, we all have a vision that gets us going every morning. So we need to understand what we are passionate about. We also need to understand what we are the best at, so that we can deliver quality ultimately. And when we understand what we're passionate about and the best at, let us look at how do we impact on the market. Let us then see how do we then make this world a better place for everyone. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. I don't think I could say that any better than you. Yes, from me as well. I think your passion is what allows you to flourish, and that sense of gratitude that comes with everything connected to what we have. And I think if we look up every day and look at what we have, I read something interesting this morning that said, what are the two things you should be grateful for when you're working from home? Is you have work and you have a home. And I think that simply puts it in terms of that we can do this. We are a powerful, powerful nation. And I really do believe that we have a lot to give, and we are able to look inward for what we have. We have strengths beyond anything. There was always the concept of the African Renaissance, and perhaps we're a little later on with it than we thought we that it is coming there. Tabang, I think I'm handing back over to you now, if I'm not wrong.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Ms. McIntyre, and also thank you to the panelists. That was a very engaging panel, and we look forward to having those inputs and see how they can contribute to inferring in the next discussion. So thank you very much for your time to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
from the community. And how can we grow communities where students see role models experiencing entrepreneurship? That led to our discussion in 2018 to say we need to look at combining community entrepreneurs. So today we are standing at an awesome event, an event filled with vibrancy, filled with opportunity, connecting SMMEs with awesome opportunity. And I need to reiterate this, that this is the first year we're doing it. It's a pioneering year for us, and our aspiration is to do this on an annual basis.
My name is Sipho Setu Stefani from Kailicha Travel and Tours. We are based
Well then, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the first 14th, not even 4th, but 14th Leadership Skills Development Summit. You have been absolutely amazing. We have received your comments, your questions. Some of you have asked, how do you get in touch with some of the panelists and the speakers regarding some internships that are available? Don't worry, our team has got your back and will be sure to refer you to the relevant parties that can assist you with your questions. I hope you still have been posting hashtag Skills Summit 2021 and you have had the opportunity and chance to visit our virtual exhibition. Without further ado, we wish to thank all our sponsors that made this event possible. Firstly, HRDC, which is the Human Resource Development Council. Also, we wish to extend sincere gratitude to Masabane Advisory Services, to Technology Innovation Services, and all of our exhibitors. Without you, this would not have been possible. Thank you to the speakers and also the contestants, as well as the participants for their time. But without you, the delegates, this, of course, would not have been possible. So we want to thank you, and please do tune in tomorrow at 9 o'clock, the very same platform, to kickstart day 2. I don't want to surprise you with what's coming up, but let me just give you a snippet. We'll be having a panel discussion on transitioning from secondary school to tertiary education, and we know that almost 50% of students who graduate from secondary school don't get to tertiary education. We're also going to be looking at creating sustainable technology and innovation for SMMEs. What are the initiatives and incentives available? And TIA, Technology Innovation Agency, will be leading that discussion. And last but not least, we'll be having SMMEs at the heart of economic recovery. Do they possess the right skills? And we do know that by 2030, 90% of the workforce will be coming from SMMEs. So it's very important for us to gear them now to make sure that they are in alignment to the mainstream economy. I will use my famous word to conclude this summit. And we say being the best is great because you're always number one. But being unique is greater because you're the only one. I'll see you. Don't forget to tune in. Take care.